everybody. Welcome to another episode of Face the Truth. I'm pretty excited about this one. I've been a fan of Greg's for a long time. He's just an amazing illustrator, but also I feel he's one of those artists that I feel I can relate to. He's self-taught, and he's got a real passion for trying to push himself in ways that he might not quite get what's going on yet, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to do this painting, how to work with oils, and how to do all these things. I've heard a lot of his interviews, so I relate a lot to his even his older art school days and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be fun to talk about that. But anyways, I'm a huge fan. Really love his work. His paintings are just delicious. They're so much fun to look at. I have a lot of respect for this guy. Forget the Tiger King, okay? Forget Joe Exotic. I've got Greg Manchess, okay? I've got Greg Exotic, the polar bear king, on the podcast. So everyone, please welcome Mr. Gregory Manchess.
Thanks. That's a great intro, man. I appreciate that.
We don't mess around here. This is the real deal. I say we as if I've got a studio and a production and everything. It's just me.
I love that. Yeah. That's what all of the freelancing is all about. It's just us.
Yeah. The hustle, man. We got to hustle. We got to do it.
Yeah.
So how have you been? I mean, last time I saw you was fun, man. We were in New York and having some drinks and hanging out. It was good talk and stuff.
Yeah, it was great. And just before that, we were hanging out at Lightbox.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's true.
I got
to hang out a couple times. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually got, what's really weird is, obviously all the stuff that's happening right now.
Yeah.
When I got back from that New York trip, I didn't really know anything about this Corona thing.
All right.
I started hearing about it when I was in New York. When I got off my plane, got into a cab, I had a slight cough. And the cab driver was like, "You don't have Corona, do you?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I didn't really know what it was. And he's like, "You got to be careful. Flying right now is not good. There's this thing happening, and it's coming over to the United States." And I was just like, I thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
But when I got back from New York, I got so sick. It was like I've never felt this sick before in my life. I had a high fever, like 103, 104 for a couple days, coughing, my chest hurt, my head hurt, just felt miserable. And then all of a sudden I was okay. Wow. So I don't know what it was, if it was a flu. The only reason I think maybe it might have just been a flu is because, I didn't go to the doctors. I was like, I slept in a different room. Like I told my wife, just keep away from me because she's pregnant. But my 2-year-old, she got a super high fever, and we had to bring her in, and turns out she had the flu. So I'm assuming I had the flu. Still, it was kind of crazy because all this stuff started happening. I'm like, oh man, what's going on?
Well, I'm not sure if it was the flu because right after that actual weekend, after the opening on Saturday, I started getting funky. A dry cough, the throat, the fever, and the fatigue. And I was down for 4 or 5 days after that and still wasn't right after about a week. So right at the same time you were getting it, I was getting it.
Wow, and, that's interesting.
I heard some other people at the society came down with it that weekend. Jim Bennett came down with it that weekend. And the more we look at it, the more I keep wondering, wait a minute, these symptoms sound so close. And it was right about the time, and of course they know that it was here in January now. But I had just flown on a plane from Kentucky to New York, and then hanging out in subways and all that stuff. So I keep wondering,
it's so weird because after I started feeling a little bit better, it took me about 4 or 5 days before I didn't feel like I got hit by a truck. I felt ruined.
Right.
And the first night when my fever was really bad, I was texting my wife. She was sleeping in our room with our littlest baby. And I was like, I think you might need to take me to the emergency room because I was feeling like that bad. Like I never felt that way before.
Wow.
But then I was just like, no, I'm tough it out. I had a cold rag on my head. I was just like, and then it was just rough for a few days. So that's crazy though. But
Yeah.
it was weird. You know, Zach, he's an artist, one of Richard's artists.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Zach, right.
Yeah. I was hanging out with him before we met for dinner, and I already have like this terrible, I don't know what I'm like a germaphobe, I guess. Like in New York, I can't touch the poles on the subways. Like it freaks me out. So like I'm like bouncing around on the subway because I won't touch the poles. And we went from train to train to train to get to where we were. And finally I grabbed this pole, and they started making fun of me because I was so like, ugh, from touching the pole. And then when we get to the restaurant, of course, Richard comes up to me and he wants to shake my hand and say, I'm like, wait, I got to go to the bathroom and wash my hands. So this is before all this stuff happened.
Yeah.
So, and I still got sick. So,
oh my God. Well, I usually don't sleep as much as I did with this thing. 4 days. I usually sleep a long day, maybe 2. 4 days. I didn't want to do work or anything, but it wasn't always sleeping either. I was just sitting in a chair staring at the wall, going, "What is going on?" Yeah. I didn't go to the doctor either. I guess I should have. But
yeah, I hate going to the doctors.
Yeah.
So like it's
always the news you don't want,
Yeah. No. Dude, like no joke. The last time I went to the doctors was I got a colonoscopy, and the only reason I got one was because my younger brother had one, and they found what do you call them? The polyps or whatever.
Polyps. Yeah.
And he was fine, but they were a little concerned because they found him. So basically he like ratted me, and he's like, I have my older brother. Should he get tested? And of course, now my mom calls me. So I'm like, oh, now I got to get tested. I was fine. But my biggest fear happened, and I fell asleep. I was like, I'm going to wake up in the middle of this. That was my biggest fear. And it happened. I woke up in the middle of the procedure.
Great.
Like literally looked back over me. I even have a bit about it in my stand-up about the whole thing. But literally woke up, saw my insides on a screen.
Yeah.
And I could feel everything going on, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And then the nurse, she literally goes, she saw me, and she goes, he's awake. And that's like the last thing I remember, and I'm like, oh. So that was the last time I went to the doctor. It's like, so no more if I can help it.
No, I don't. I had the colonoscopy twice now. I have to go in every 5 years, and I don't go out. I only let them go halfway or a quarter. I mean, the last time I was there, the doctor said, all right, titrate the guy like a quarter or whatever it is. And as soon as he did that, the whole room just went, whoa, and just went all weird. But I managed to get through it, watching TV of my insides like you did.
Oh, yeah, it's so weird, man. Yeah, I only remember like waking up and seeing that and hearing the nurse say that, and then all of a sudden I woke up in a different room. And I'm like, whoa, okay, this is trippy, man.
Yeah, bizarre.
So it's crazy. So I someone I can't remember exactly who it was. Someone wrote me and said they're so excited I'm going to be talking to you, and have you seen this video of Greg? And I was like, I don't think I have. So I looked it up, and there's so many videos of you on YouTube.
I'm collecting them.
Yeah, I was like, man, do I? I think it's good that we're starting off talking about colonoscopies and stuff because everything everyone knows about you is already out there. Like this is like what am I?
Yeah, but we're going to talk about in-depth stuff, richer stuff. Yeah.
But it's really cool. Like I was watching some of your videos. First of all, I need to get a copy of that book. It's so awesome, and I love your. I think if I remember this correctly, you first did the first painting and then from there they're like, oh, there's a story there, and then you built it from that.
Yeah.
That's just awesome, man. That's so
So
cool.
I mean, I had the world in mind when I did the painting in order to get the painting to read for the character. And so there was an inkling of background material, you know. And then people said, oh my God, one of my friends said, you got to get that in front of a publisher.
Yeah.
And I actually knew a guy who was did some work for Barnes and Noble, and then he went off to become a rep, an agent, a literary agent. And so I just I pitched it to him, told him the idea. He loved it, and later on he came back and said, can I represent you? And then the odd thing there was then he later on stopped being an agent because he was offered a job at Simon & Schuster for his own imprint. And I said, well, that's great. It's bad for me, but wait a minute, maybe I should pitch you the book. And then he said, give me a year. So that was like year number 6 of trying to get this thing off the ground.
Yeah.
And then they finally bought it, and everything went from there.
That's awesome. Oh, and this is above the Timberline, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I also found it really interesting just watching your technique, because I've never. I felt so silly actually that I haven't just tried to find videos before. I don't know why, but whatever. So there were so many videos. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. There's actually videos of Greg painting. This is so cool. But I found out your technique was so much different than what I had thought in my mind, because I'm a huge fan of just painterly and brushy type work. To me, it's something I try to get away with as much as I can when I can. But it was so cool to me to see how you're working on, like you draw it out on a flat surface. Now is that canvas that you flat on a table, or is it?
Just flat on my drafting table.
Oh, okay.
A lot of times, well, I'll start with most times I get a refined sketch, especially for clients, so they can see what's going on. Then I project that onto the canvas and I lightly sketch it off. Yeah. And go. Then you do
like a raw umber or something over it, let it dry, and then
acrylic to seal off the pencil.
Oh, it's an acrylic first. Okay, that makes more sense. And then you start building the paint on top. And I thought that was so interesting. Just like, it makes sense now because I love that there's some aspects to your work where you can see some of that pencil come through in certain areas, and it just has like a really, I don't know, that's that human thumbprint that like I want and that I love when I see it. So it was really cool to see it work that way.
Thanks.
I kind of just had like this idea of, first of all, your paintings have like such an epic feeling to them that I thought they were all like 10 feet wide, and that you're using like a giant brush and just whoosh. That's what they look like. They look like and so it was really cool to see that.
Well, it's interesting because lately I'm working with this gallery in Paris that had encouraged me to paint larger. So I stretched some of these paintings I got on my wall now that up a couple of them 5-6 feet wide. So I am painting with bigger brush and a palette knife and getting in there and working around. But I showed them the paintings and they went, "Whoa, too big." So I gotta reel it back a little bit. But the thing is, I go from like a small study or a small piece, like I did a series of helmets, and now I'm doing octopi, and I'm also doing postage stamps. So in a postage stamp, you really can't get much bigger than this because they're going to come down.
So you won't paint them? You'll paint the actual stamp only about that big?
Yeah, only about 6 inches wide or something like this. Because if you get too big and they come down to that stamp size, they tighten up. And you can't see anything loose, so I have to try to plan for the looseness. And then what I do is I scale the brushes down, so it's almost as if you're working huge with a big fat brush, and then you scale that down, then you're working this big with a 1/4 inch brush.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so it scales the brushwork up and down. So I like
that's
to think that I can paint at any scale.
Yeah.
As long as I know, if I can visualize how I want that paint to look, I can get there based on the brushes and the size and all that. Sometimes I'll draw directly to the canvas, seal that off with the acrylic, and then start painting. But it's whatever it takes to get that image on the canvas.
Now, I have a technical question about that because I've never really tried that before. I usually either just work in acrylic or just work in oil, and I like this one I've started. I have to finish it. It's just like haunting me, but like I like to start with like a non-white surface, so that way I have like a nice mid-tone basically to start with.
Right.
Well, like when you put that acrylic down and then you start doing oil on top of that, it sticks fine to the acrylic layer. Like it seems like it would slide on there or like eventually crack on it, or is that just
no, it's a very thin layer of the acrylic, and sometimes I actually scrub through that layer and lift the pencil out. Depends on how hard I'm laying the brushwork down.
Okay.
But technically it's supposed to be stable for that underlying acrylic because it's bonding to the gesso on there. The gesso is usually an acrylic gesso that I use.
Okay.
And then that's bonding pretty good. And then the oil paint comes in and it's grabbing into the peaks and valleys of the surface and also the bits of pigment that are left over, I believe, from the acrylic. But it's not a very thick acrylic. Otherwise, it would be a little slippery and stuff. So it's more like a sheen that just protects the pencil for as long as it can. And when I'm working, I can take that oil off and get back to my pencil to see if I've missed or something. But if I lose it, I lose it. And it's taken a lot of years to build up the confidence to go, well, I'm just going to draw it with the paint. But basically, I'm drawing with the paint anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
Pencil just becomes a guide at that point. And to stay to that guide religiously is not good either, you know.
Yeah.
So I more and more now when I do a portrait demo, I'll only put in the briefest of landmarks, like the one behind you. You know, I'd put the eye lines in and the under the eye lid and the darks in the nostrils, the mouth line, of course, chin and hairline. And after that, all this stuff in here and all that, I paint. You know, I don't have to mark it out. I can just paint it.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody does, right? You're not putting all the drawing in there when you do it, right?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I'm doing a really quick. I'm grateful right now. It's been slow because of everything that's going on, but I've had some work, which is good. But I have I'm doing this cover, like a really quick cover that's due in a couple days. Not a very fun one. It's just like a very, you know, bland kind of portrait of just regular people that nobody knows, and it's just kind of straightforward. And it's hard sometimes to like be excited about it, you know, because there's not much creativity happening. It's just all right. I'm working from really, really bad photo reference, and I'm trying to make them look as good as possible. But I had to do this thing where I try to explain to these. I've never worked with these people before, and I try to explain to them that the pencil, my drawings they're not going to be, they're not like final finished, you know, finished rendered drawings. They're basically, you know, you can see the likeness is there, the proportions are there, and the composition's there. They're a guideline for me. So, and you know, I try to explain them like, you know, just think about, you know, I know the pencil line can sometimes look harsh, especially when you're drawing women. Just know that when I paint it, that's when I'm going to do all the work. That's when everything's going to come together, and I'm going to develop it. And
right.
So they're like, oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thanks for letting us know. And then as soon as I sent the sketch in, they're like, ooh, can you make them look this way and that way? I'm like, I will when I paint it. Like when I paint it, I will.
Exactly.
But it can be a weird thing sometimes.
Yeah, I've had clients say to me, whoa, what's a sketch? What are you doing? You know, I said, well, what I'm trying to show you is all the detail, you're going to expect, and because they've said these sketches don't look like your paintings. I'm like, yeah, those are the body underneath. That's the support. So when I get on top, I can let go or whatever. But you need to see that sketch so you know that everything's in the place you want it. That I'm going to do what you're asking me to do.
Yeah.
And then the next step is me to paint on top of that, and that's when I lose edges and mess things up and whatever. And it's a number of times I've had to talk my way back into the job because they were afraid that they got the wrong guy or something,
Yeah.
But the other way too is that some of the clients are, if I did a loose sketch, they're like, can you give us a tighter sketch so we see what's going on? And I was like, okay, but I'm going to obliterate that part, So it's I've found after all these years, it's awkward all the way around because it's people working with people, and we're trying to communicate with our brain waves, trying to figure out what you're thinking, what you see in your head, what I'm thinking, what I see in my head, and we got to get these things to match. And illustration is all about communication, and not only in painting, but in our work with art directors and clients. And it's the best thing. I always tell my students that's what we do. We communicate, and we have to be able to. I give them grief for not having good handwriting. I'm like, you got to be able to communicate. I have to see that. It's got to be legible. When you write me a text or something, even an email, you got to proofread it. The sentences have to make sense. Otherwise, people will miss your point, and it all goes to hell from there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, man, there's been so many times where I send a message and I'm doing it through my phone, and I'm trying to say like fucking, and it says ducking, and I get so pissed off, and I have to write them. I said, no, I meant fucking. Okay. Stupid phones.
Right. I know. Stupid smartphone.
Yeah. But that's true though. It's I think that's the one thing that I've learned too, and it's just working with clients, and it's one of the most important things is to be able to be someone that is reliable, that you can, communicate, have a conversation, also communicate without getting too crazy. If you're frustrated about something, being able to explain like, hey, listen, this is not working. This is why it's not working. Because sometimes I've done things in the past where I don't communicate that, and then things just get worse with a certain job, and you're like, oh, this is not going well, because it's not always a great time.
No, it's not. And it took me years to learn that. It took me years to learn how to work with people. That's part of the thing as any artist or illustrators. And I see illustrators as artists, but I say illustrators because I know that we as illustrators are on the working edge of painting and drawing and all the rest of it. But when you come into the business, you've got to learn how to speak on the phone. You've got to learn how to write a good letter to somebody, which is now email. And this whole process of back and forth takes a while. I was lucky to start out in a studio as the 7th illustrator in a group of illustrators in this department out in Iowa, middle of nowhere. Gary Kelly was actually the boss there before Gary was the great Gary, and but he was always great. That was the thing.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot. They didn't know that when I started, like the first day, I was listening to the other guys in the room talk to their art directors. And I was paying attention to what they said. So when I had to talk to my art director, I was mimicking, make a joke in the beginning and be polite, and then try to manipulate what you're saying and all that crap. And I was taking notes the whole time. So by watching all these guys is how I built my career. And I also, at the same point, realized that you don't want to be a dick in this business,
Yeah.
And one of the worst things I did was complained about a job at a company picnic for Better Homes and Gardens that I got invited to. And I was complaining about this stupid job where they made me put in these little tiny windows, blah, blah, blah. And I was giving the art director a bunch of grief and didn't know that the art director was the guy sitting next to me on the same job. And he introduced himself. And that was a life lesson right there. I apologized up one side and down the other. And he never worked with me again until the last year I was at the studio. A job came in and everybody else was busy. It was by that same guy, and Gary handed it to me and he said, do something edgy with this because that's what he's looking for. I said, okay. So I went kooky with it. I did this funky pen line, and I took pictures of my friends in the studio and cut their heads out and put them on all the bodies and stuff. And this guy saw it and went bananas. He loved it and wrote me a letter and said, I didn't believe in you at first, and you were such a jerk and all that. And it was really great,
Man, so you and I both have the same agent, Richard Solomon, and that, like, when I first agreed to work with Richard and be a part of the team, I was so excited just because of, or I should say, not team, but art family or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But there's so many artists represented by Richard that were like art heroes to me, like you, CF Payne. Like there's just a ton of artists that like James Bennett, and I just remember like when I first joined, just feeling like, oh my gosh, like. It was cool because I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm a part of this group of these artists that I respect so much. Now I got to step my game up even more because now I'm going to make them look bad if I'm not that good. You know what I mean? Like I put this pressure. Yeah. But I have a similar story of what you just said is one time, this is like 5-6 years ago, this job I was doing was just a terrible job. And it was for an advertisement thing. And they were looking for a photorealistic painting of an arm coming in from one side holding a can, but instead of a can, it's a tiger, like the size of a can, because it was supposed to represent this like a tiger drink or something that gives you energy, but they wanted the tiger to look the size of a can in the person's hand, and they wanted the tiger to be as realistic as possible. And then in the background, there's people dancing in a club and stuff. And so the whole time I'm doing this, I'm painting this thing as realistic as possible. And I'm talking like every little hair and, soft edges, doing the whole thing. And I'm like very proud of it. It's like I'm working so hard, and I send it in. They want to see, progress. And they're like, oh, this is looking good, but it's still not realistic enough. And I would ask them over and over again, are you guys looking for photo manipulation or something? Because you realize that I'm painting this, like I don't know if I can get more photo. And they're like, no, we love your work, but we want it more real. And I'm like, I was writing Richard, I'm feeling nervous about this one. Like I don't know, man. Every time I write them, I think they want photo manipulation. And he's just like, he's like, no, they know we've been back and forth with them, and it was so stressful. And finally, at the very end, I got a message from Richard saying they decided to go with someone else after I did all the work because it's not realistic enough for them. And I was just like, how can it not be? I mean, this is so realistic. It's ridiculous. Wow. And then I found out they went with a photo manipulator. They actually, some guy, he did it over the weekend. I spent like 2 weeks basically trying to, but I got so pissed off. I wrote Richard this email of just blankety blank this mother, just going on. Like, I'm so pissed off. Yeah. I didn't realize I sent it to the art director.
Oh.
Yeah.
Zoom.
Right. I like, and I mean, I was just like, I was supposed to be to Richard, but I was like trying to blow off my steam to Richard. Like this guy's a, piece of shit, like just going on and on. Like, I mean, I told you this whole time that they were doing this, and I said, I was like, yeah, I don't know. It was just crazy. And Richard wrote me back. He's like, call me. And I'm like, Oh shit. So
Oh
yeah, that
God.
was fun.
I didn't do one like that, but I've had that call from Richard, where he says, "Call me."
Yeah.
There was a brief story. Sports Illustrated called. They wanted a guy. They wanted a guy that could paint a frame from a film they had of when this one hockey player hit another guy in the head with a hockey stick, and they wanted to show the moment that the stick was hitting the guy in the head. And anyway, Richard said, "Call them. You know, it's a $10,000 job." And I called him, and we got to talking. And I said, "You don't really want see that I'm already saying it the wrong way." I said to them, "You don't want to do the moment of, because in a painting, if the stick is here in its head, it's it's frozen, and it looks like it's been there for a year and a half." And I said, "You want the moment before or the moment after?" And art director right there said, "Oh yeah, I see your point. You know what? Let me call you back." And she called Richard instead and said, "We don't want this guy. He's out."
Yeah.
And Richard was so livid.
Yeah.
The crew said he had to leave the building and take a walk around the block, and that's when I got to "Call me."
Yeah. Yeah.
Said, you know,
That's pretty funny.
When I first I went to Richard on 3 different occasions to show him my portfolio. And this is, back in the day when he was collecting great artists, and I was doing my best to get his interest. 3 separate times. And the 3rd time he turned me down, I realized, forget this guy. I'm just spinning my wheels. I'm not doing this. So I just went about my business and working as hard as I could with paintings. And I had a bunch of stuff in the Society of Illustrators, one annual, maybe 4 or 5 pieces at a time. And he gave me a call. And he said, "Hey, I've been thinking about your work. I saw in Society, blah, blah, blah. I think maybe I could represent you." And I said, "No, thanks," and hung up the phone.
Yeah.
And so a couple months went by, and he called me again. And I said, "No, thanks," and hung up the phone. I turned him down 3 times. And on the 3rd time, I was thinking, "Manchess, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
So I called him back and I apologized. And then we worked together for 21 years or whatever. So I don't know what was going on there.
Well, like your name is, this is a chess game. Gotta do the right move, figure out what the right move is, and
they don't have classes on this in art school, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this you got to learn this stuff on the fly, and I share that with my students and stuff, because that is the realities of the business. Like what you're talking about, you're going to get yourself in trouble. You're going to have to get yourself out of trouble. I did a cover for Time magazine, and the guy, it was an ape with blue eyes because it was a proto-human. And I had already, those are back in the days when I had to send it to the photographer to get a transparency shot of the thing, and then send that to the magazine. And I put blue eyes in it, and it shipped it off on FedEx, and it was gone. And I got back to my studio, and the art director called and said, "I've been thinking about those eyes, and I think we should make them brown." And I'm thinking, okay, what do I tell this guy, right? What should I lie? No, I'm trying to figure out how to tell him the truth. And then that's when it dawned on me, I just got to go with it. And I said, "You know what? I think you're right. I think they should be brown eyes." And then I went on and explained why it was so ape-like to have brown eyes and ape this and ape that. And I drove the ape angle as much as I could. He finally said, maybe we should go back to the blue, because we got to get some human stuff in there.
Yeah.
And I said, "You're right. Let's just go with that." And he hung up.
That's awesome.
And I saved my butt. But I'd been in the business a while to be able to try to talk my way out of things and talk my way into things. I did some paintings for the Coen brothers' latest movie,
Oh wow, that's
What a
awesome.
Buster Scruggs. Yeah.
The Netflix, was it a
Yeah.
Netflix movie or something?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Netflix. Those are all my paintings in there.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was
Wow, I have to
really,
watch that again. That's so
I
cool.
was thrilled. But they only called me for the 6 full color pieces for each short story. And while I
Okay.
was there working with them, they I noticed that they needed to do little bits in the book. There's a book in the film that a hand comes in and opens it up and pages to the first chapter or whatever. And there's a sketch in there, and I said, well, wait, actually, on the cover of the book, it's on the first frame of the film, there's an embossed drawing on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, who's doing the drawing? And they said, oh, we haven't found anybody yet. I don't know. And I said, I cut my teeth on black and white artwork coming up through this business, so I can do that in a heartbeat. And they looked at me like I was joking around. I said, no, I'm serious. I'll bring in some sketches tomorrow. So long story short, that kept happening until I had all the sketches at the beginning of each chapter, the end of each chapter, and the embossed cover of the book. So I turned what started out as 6 paintings into about 6 paintings and 15 drawings.
Oh, that's awesome.
So selling within the job as well, nobody talks about that. Nobody teaches that. You gotta kind of find out, or listen to us talk about it.
I did, like, recently the same thing happened. Although unfortunately, I don't know what's going on with this job with whatever's going on right now. But I have done 2 paintings for I did a bunch of paintings for Pop TV for the show called Schitt's Creek, and then I did another one called Hot Date. So 2 different shows, and those went great. So they contacted me in December to do one, basically like a Rembrandt style painting that they wanted of an owl character they had, and that was a lot of fun. So I tried to paint it like Rembrandt technique.
Cool.
And it turned out, but the cool thing was they were like talking to me about the kind of same thing you just said. They've got these 2 other shows that they're wanting to pitch artwork for, but it's completely different styles. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? And they said, well, we want one to be like, like a kind of a 1980s airbrush, like technique. And I was like, well, I can do that. They're like, well, you can? I'm like, well, yeah, of course I can do that. And then they're like, well, then we also want this for this other show. It's sort of like a silly comedy type thing. For the poster for that, we want something that looks like Jack Davis. And I was like, I can do that too. And they were like really confused. And then I basically talked them into it. And so I both of them are almost finished. And then just before this thing happened, I didn't hear from them anymore. And I haven't heard from them since. So I don't know what's happening, if it's going to happen. But I was so excited because I was about to be able to share 3 posters for a TV show, all completely different styles. And I thought, this is great for me because I'm able to show them in the future, like, any style you need, I can do. I can do Jack Davis. I can do, of course, I'm not saying I'm as good as Jack Davis, but I'm saying I can do something in that genre.
Right.
Because they were like wanting to do like that kind of almost like those old, like Woody Allen 70s type. I think Jack Davis did a few of those like old movie posters, like that kind of old, like watercolor pen and ink.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I started working on that. It was great. And then the airbrush one was really cool. Total 80s thing. And they were like, wow, this really does look like an airbrush painting. I'm like, yeah. So it was really cool to show them, but that's the interesting thing about illustration, though, is it's easy to get pigeonholed into, oh, you just do this one thing. And it's happened to me several times, where I've been talking to art director about a certain thing. And it's literally like they will go on and on about how amazing you are at painting apples. But then they ask you, but can you paint an orange?
Exactly. Exactly.
Of course I can paint an orange. But the first time I went to Rolling Stone, I have been wanting to work for Rolling Stone for years, and I went to New York, and Richard was supposed to set me up with a bunch of different people to meet, and the only one I cared about was Rolling Stone, and I didn't get it. Oh. And I was bummed about it, and he got me MLB. And I went there and I got 3 paintings for MLB, which was cool. And he was all excited about that. He's like, who else do you want me to call? And I was like, Rolling Stone. And finally he called them and they said, no, we're not really interested in seeing anybody today. And I was so bummed. But then the phone rang and it was Steve Charney, who was the art director at the time. And he's like, oh, I'd love to meet Jason. I'm a huge fan. I'm like, wow, really? So I go to the office and we're looking at my work and stuff. And he's going on and on about how he's a big fan. And I just decided just to be like straight up. And it was weird because I was so excited to be in Rolling Stone offices, all the artwork everywhere. And it's just like, this is the place, man. And I just said to him, like, if you're such a big fan, why haven't you hired me before?
Yeah.
Like I will do anything for you guys. You know, I'm a huge fan of music and art. And he just told me, he goes, you know, your style of caricature is really, really good, but we already have Philip Burke and we've got Victor Huaz, and it's like very specific styles, and yours would be just so drastic. It would kind of change the mood. And I was like thinking, good.
Yeah.
Like right. let's mix it up a little bit. Like
exactly.
But they were like, no, this is our aesthetic. And he goes and I had this like really rough block and painting of Forrest Whitaker that was caricature-ish. And he's like, man, that's a really cool technique. If you could do that, but more like realistic portraits instead of caricature, I could find some work for you for that. And I was like, well, of course I can do that. And then I showed him, I had my iPad with me, and this is so funny because I bought an iPad when they first came out with the sole purpose of just using it as a portfolio. So I could go places and just show them my work. And zoom in. I had sketch folder, painting folders, all this kind of stuff. And they were blown away by it. It was like as if I invented this idea or something. But that's how early this was happening, though. People haven't been using it for that yet.
Wow.
And so he's blown away by the iPad. I'm like, look, you can zoom in and you can. And he saw these realistic portraits and he's like, I didn't know you could do that. And I was just like, I paint my caricatures very realistic. Like, why can't I do this? And then he's like, that must take you weeks. Our deadlines are quick. And I was like, no, I can do them in a couple days. So I got my first Rolling Stone, like literally the following Monday. And it's one of those things where I wouldn't have gotten it if I didn't push, if I didn't check this out. And it's hard. And, I really feel like the best way, I mean, I don't know, things are changing all the time in the industry, but I feel like the best way for me has always been to be able to meet people in person. And like, I feel like if I can meet you in person, we can talk. I can convince you to work with me.
Yeah. Words out of my mouth. I tell people, mostly, the students and stuff, but even friends, if I can get in front of a client, I can talk them into using me. Yeah. I can talk to them like I'm talking to you now, so they feel like you're being upfront, honest, forthright, all the rest, but that you're leveling with them and you're saying, I know what you need and I know what I want to do for you. And you don't really say, give me the chance. There's no begging going on. There's no like, please, please, please give me a job. It's more about explaining how you understand what their needs are and showing them what they buy. Yeah. And those two together, especially if you're in person, then they want to work with you because they feel instantly, I think I can work with this person because I think they get me. Yeah. I think they get what we're doing. And if you can get that across, you're golden. And that's why, I can sell that. Now, there's been a little bit of a problem with an agent sometimes because the agent's coming at it from a whole different perspective than the artist is. And sometimes, like I found out, there are certain jobs that came up and went away because the agent didn't feel like, well, that was my thing or something like that. Whereas, no, the budget wasn't enough. It was, I don't know, fill in the blank. It was the New Yorker, and they weren't going to pay a lot. I don't care. I want to get in the New Yorker because I can turn that into something else down the line.
It's a billboard. That's what I always say. It's a billboard.
Exactly right. It's advertising you can't pay for.
Yeah. And there's a few magazines like that Yeah, like it's sort of surprising how low they pay.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I know everyone's gonna see this one, so I'll do that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that makes more sense.
No, absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the first double page spreads I did in a book, it was either Workbook or American Showcase. I can't remember now. But we used to talk about all those things when they sent those books around before the internet got so big. And I wanted to take out a double page spread because I knew as soon as you got to my page, you're looking at nothing but my work. And I'm not caught in a little corner pocket that somebody has to find. And so I did a painting of these guys on safari back in the 1800s, a bunch of British guys. And actually it was for Richard. And Richard said, who in the hell are we going to sell this to? National Geographic or something? And I went, Richard, if we could sell the National Geographic, it would be brilliant.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
First call after the book came out, National Geographic. And I worked with them for years after that.
That's awesome.
Because I showed them what they wanted, and then we got to talking, and I met them on the phone. I went to D.C. and I sat and talked with them. I even went on an expedition with them, because after a while you're building trust, and that's what it's about.
And clients like that, they love once they've worked with you. That's the thing that I love too. Like building a good relationship with a client, like. It's first of all, it's job security, but secondly, like you said, like, don't be a dick. There's no reason to act that way, but it's like, if you can, make a client feel like, hey, we know this guy can handle, like, he's gonna do a great job. He's professional. We can talk. We can work back and forth and communicate with him. The deadline's going to be met. It's going to be an awesome. We know this is going to be a great piece.
Yeah.
That's where you want to be, because then they're going to use you again and again, and
absolutely,
like, those are the best kind of clients too.
Yeah. The reason I got that Time magazine job in the first place is because I was working with art director at the Philadelphia Inquirer Sunday magazine. And she was in a bind there at the magazine where they had it was in the first days of digital, they had memory of about 2K, and everything was digitized, and they wanted to blow this photo up and put it on the cover of that Sunday magazine. And they knew they couldn't get it to come up large enough, so they were in dire straits. They needed this thing really fast. So she gave me a call and said, can you do a painting from this photo, and can you do it by tomorrow? And I asked to see the painting, and they showed it to me, or the photo, and I said, yeah, I'll have it ready. And then we had to work out timing to get a photograph and all that stuff. But I did that in a heartbeat. It got in the Society of Illustrators. It got them a lot of attention. It was just one of those great moments in a career. She left that magazine, and the first job she got was at Time magazine. And when Time was in a bind one time, I was the go-to guy that she remembered. He bailed me out. I'm going to call him back, and that's how I got to do the cover.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
And it's a small world too, the art director world. Like, everyone seems to know everybody.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why to not be a dick.
I know. Yeah. Especially online, not being a dick.
Yeah.
Whole Facebook thing, whatever.
When you are doing your huge pieces that you do, like the National Geographic, like I've seen, like you've done like period type pieces, war scenes, and when I look at those pieces, like, first and foremost, like the technique is just beautiful. I love the brushwork and everything.
Thanks.
But I understand that. Like, I get it. But what blows me away is, because I understand also, man, you gotta to do these scenes, you gotta do a lot of research. You've got to do all these compositions. And then what I'm wondering is, even for your book, obviously you work with models, but to get all the different kinds of angles you need, the costumes, I'm just curious about your technique with that. Because, I mean, for me, sometimes I have to do the same thing, and I use myself as a model a lot for things. I'll find clothing that is similar to what I need just so I can see how it folds and stuff. And then I just have to kind of just make up whatever else. And I was just curious because some of your pieces are just like, man, there's no way he went back in time. So how did he do that?
Well, you know, when you think about it, it's all about form and shape and value. And that's all we really need to capture in order to get an image going. And you know, the images start out like these little guys, right? The thumbnail sketches, just little things like that. And then now I'm dividing up space. But after that, I'm very influenced by cinematography. I'm sure you love cinematography too. And it's building that slowly as you go. So I use myself as a model a lot. I've taken some grief about that because people will recognize me in certain things. And I feel a little bad. And then I think it doesn't really matter. The reason I use myself is not because I need to see myself in the painting. I'd rather not. I use myself because it's extremely difficult to coach a model, and they know this in Hollywood all the time, to coach a model to do that body movement that I have locked in my head. I can do it, and I mimic that. Then I redraw a whole bunch to shift my figure into the model's figure, that kind of thing. I did that a lot for Above the Timberline because I worked with Tim O'Brien's son at the time. He was like 14 or 15, I think. And he has a couple of rods in his spine from a childhood disease or condition or whatever. And he couldn't bend and move as much. And also he didn't fit the costume. And I fit the costume. So I would go and shoot him under the same lighting conditions and work with him. Then I'd come back in my studio, put everything on, relight it, and shoot it over again. Then I had to project and sketch and redraw to match both of us together.
Yeah, so, kind of Frankenstein it all.
Talk about dumb. What was I thinking? I mean, the ultimate condition would be to get the perfect costume, get a lighting director, and get it all set up so you can shoot.
But see, the difference here though is like you were talking about, like you love cinema and like, I mean, man, like sometimes I have to watch a movie a couple times just because I didn't pay attention for the first time because I was just watching all the scene. Like Once Upon a Time.
I'm so glad you said that because I feel like an idiot sometimes. They'll say, "What was the movie about?" I can't remember because I was watching the production value.
Yeah, like there was something recently. Oh, I just watched it was 1917. And the filming in that is just like unreal. Like you can stop every scene and it's just like it looks like a graphic novel basically.
Incredible.
But see, here's the difference is us when we're doing it as an illustrator, they have millions of dollars, actors, costumes, all this kind of stuff. We just don't. We have none of that.
Right.
And so that's what's amazing for me to be able to see. I mean, one of my favorite Norman Rockwell stories. I'm sure I don't know if you've read his book. I mean, obviously you've been in the Norman Rockwell Museum, which is awesome. But and I want to talk to you about that as well. But I love Norman Rockwell. I have as many books of his as possible. I read his book. I think it's just called My Life as an Illustrator, I think.
My Adventures as an Illustrator.
It's an amazing book, but there's a scene, or not a scene, but a part in it where he talks about his models and the costumes and what he would go through to set things up. And there's one part where I just love it, where he took a duck and he nailed a duck down to a piece of wood through the webbing in its feet because the ducks, and he says the ducks don't have any feeling in the webbing of their feet. So he would just nail this duck to a piece of wood so he could paint it. And I was just thinking, man, how much he would love digital cameras, nowadays, and what we can do with, just, different technologies and, I mean, just what even in the last like 5 years, how things have changed that way. But
Leyendecker used to give him a grief for working from photography.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all the time. He came over one time and Norman had like 50 photos spread out on the floor that he was going through, and Leyendecker just
Gotta do it from life.
ripped him a new one. What's that?
He wanted him like to do it from life.
I suppose so. I
or
guess
just from your.
well,
Yeah.
no, I don't think he needed to do it from memory because Leyendecker had models and stuff. And that's the whole trick with all this goofiness about whether people work from photography or not.
Yeah.
Photography is not a painting. Photography is a guide. You have to go against what you shoot in order to have a painting.
Yeah.
And I've tested myself so many times about drawing one-to-one, looking at something and getting it on the page. It's not a problem. And so when I get to the photography, I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for majorly foreshortened forms to push me. And that if Michelangelo and Da Vinci had cameras, those guys would have been using them.
Oh yeah, of course.
What we're looking for is that compressed space because we have to take it from three-dimensional to two-dimensional. The camera does that instantaneously, and so you can rule out all this junk that you're trying to forget about and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not a problem.
No, I think what that's saying. There's many ways to skin a cat, which I think that's a really weird saying. There's many ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
You know, as long as he's dead in the end, what does it matter? You know. Like, but yeah, it's funny. I mean, I early when I was first getting started, for some reason, I had this strange idea in my mind that a true artist doesn't use reference. It was like it was one of those things I struggled through, and then I'm like, man, my hands really suck, and like, and then I just realized, oh man, I just take photos of things and use it as reference, and all of a sudden I was. Like literally when I started doing that, I started getting illustrated work like really fast. It was like
absolutely.
It was just like it changed everything for me.
Well,
but I was stubborn early on.
Oh, so was I. Exactly, Jason. Really, when I was at that studio, I said, okay, if I'm going to be a studio illustrator, I'm going to have to do it the right way. And I took my fine art mind and put it into an illustration world and got my butt handed to me because I was trying to draw everything from my head or from the reference without the artograph, without projection. And all the guys around me were making light year leaps away, and I finally broke down, and then I said to myself, if I'm going to use projection and trace, I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to use it as a teacher. And my drawing just never, it got so much better right after that because I started to understand that you can trace the foreshortening and you start to understand the length of the line, the curve of the line, the shape of the line, what it's trying to get across so much faster. We do it with everything else. If you're going to learn how to play a violin or something, you watch the guy doing it. You try to imitate the bowing, all that stuff. Same with guitar. Acting, we mimic people to bring across the character. But when it gets to the art, oh, no, you got to pull it all out of your head as if you made it all up right away, you know. Anyway.
Yeah, that's really a good point. And I was thinking when you were saying that about how, you know, early on when I started, when I switched over from traditional to digital for my illustration work, I thought that digital work was cheating and it wasn't real illustration and real art. And I was doing everything in acrylic at the time, and I was doing pieces that I was happy with, but it was so stressful for the deadlines and everything. And then I eventually started doing digital painting. I started teaching myself how to do it, and I realized, oh my gosh, I can still paint this way. I didn't, you know, I had to try it before I realized, oh my, yeah, I can do this. I can paint with this. And you know, it was really funny too. Just even I got guff early on when I went to the Society of Illustrators and I had pieces, and I overheard people at the Society of Illustrators going, "Oh, that's just a digital, you know, that's digital." And but like they didn't know until they read the thing, you know. And now it's like almost all digital when you go to those shows.
Right.
But that's one. It's almost like in the Matrix where. There's that scene where whatever her name is, I can't think of her name now, but the female actor, when she's like, I need to learn. I need to know how to fly a helicopter, and they just
Right.
like
I love that.
yeah. And all of a sudden she's like, I can fly a helicopter. I feel like digital painting is that way for me, or has been that way. Just like what you were saying is, I've learned so much faster about color, about light, about values, about soft edges, about everything, because I can work so much faster. And in a way, it allowed me to learn how not to do things quicker, so that I knew how to do things better. And then what I noticed is when I go back and I work on my oil paintings or my watercolor, I'm so much better. It's almost like I skipped so many stages of frustration and failure with my traditional work. And then, but the more I paint traditionally, I pick up awesome things about brush technique, thick and thin, weird edges that happen when certain brush strokes go over, and different things that happen where I can take that into my digital work. And it goes back and forth where my work just kind of, it becomes one thing. And I feel like I'm almost like a cyborg artist,
Yeah, exactly. I talk with the students all the time, and I tell them constantly, the oil paint informs your digital, the digital informs your oil painting or your watercolor, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the traditional informs the digital informs the traditional. They cross-pollinate. As long as you're paying attention. We hold ourselves back so much because early on, when we're not exposed to illustration or artists or whatever, when we're just getting going, like stepping out into the world to be an artist, and we think we know what an artist is, and we set up these barriers I don't want to do that, I want to be a good guy, so I'm going to do this over here, and it's closing in the walls on our ability to express. And everybody knows, an artist is supposed to think outside the box and be free and all that stuff, and yet we hold ourselves back. And so why wouldn't we go to digital to take another step forward with all that stuff? Back in 81, I bought my first Apple computer. I was going to be a digital artist. I was thinking I would work with the science and do these great pieces, and also oil paint. Well, back then was not user-friendly, and it came with a stack of books, and I wasn't about to get into coding and all that junk. So I slowly walked away from that and put all the time into my traditional work. And it's been okay that way. It allowed me to understand the paint from a real point of view with the pigment. But opening up I find is tough for everybody. Me too. To be able to go to the wall and then realize I don't have to climb it. I could dig under it or walk around it, And it's when we let go and go towards something that we start to make discoveries about expanding in our work. That's the other thing I was going to say, though, too, that I think you kind of get into, which is that you don't want to be really a one-trick pony your entire career. You want to be able to do Jack Davis's technique and Frazetta's and Cornwell's and Rockwell. You want to be able to know what those are about, maybe even be able to copy them, because they lead you to places that are closer to yourself. And what I'm trying to tell the students more and more now is, okay, I oil paint, that's my thing, but I'm expanding that. I can work in a lot of other techniques and medium, but the only way that you continue your career is to innovate your own approach. You have to keep changing your so-called style and keep evolving your voice, and that's what keeps you current.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 'cause everything keeps changing. I mean, it's interesting because that's one thing I noticed a long time ago. Which I think is probably been one of the most helpful things for me. I think as an artist, it can be very easy to get bored of. I mean, for me, it's hard for me to, like, even with when it comes to caricature illustration stuff. Because of that, I end up doing a lot of political people and different things. and I cannot like just draw the person the same way every single time. Like, like there's certain artists that I've noticed who just, once they figure out how to draw George W. Bush, they just, they keep getting covers of him and they just keep drawing him the same way. And there's something about that with me. For me personally, I can't do that.
Right.
And I get excited, like, oh man, I can't wait to the next time I get to do, especially like Trump right now. It's, for me, people are like, how in the world could you want to even draw him? It's fun. It's a lot of fun. And the reason is for one, he's going to see it for the most part. And it's exciting to know that he's going to see it, because I'm hoping one of these days he gets pissed and tweets something, because I think that'll be hilarious.
It would be great and good for your career.
Yeah. But also it's like, how can I draw him differently, explore things and push it a little bit further and different than I did the last time, while still capturing his character, his feeling, telling the story I needed to because it's easy to fall into that trap as an artist where you're just like, oh, I got this figured out. I mean, when Obama was president, I did that. I can't even tell you how many Obamas I did, but it was so much fun because every single time I would do something different with him. And it was exciting, and it was a challenge. Like, what can I do, but luckily art directors were cool with it,
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's different in caricature. Obviously, when I do realistic portrait work, I mean, it's going to be just a portrait of the person. And then I think that where it becomes more unique and special is it comes into like the brush work and the, those kind of choices make it more unique. Yeah. Because I mean, otherwise you're just basically measuring,
Absolutely. I wrote a post recently about doing portraits for Muddy Colors, and it is not about copying that reference. I see so many guys online where you see they've found a photo and they love it and they're just copying the photo. They'll put in the photo anomalies, the whole thing where it's overexposed or underexposed or whatever. Whereas when you look at your work and it's photo referenced, it's still a painting. You're looking at that, but you're doing Jason. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was trying to explain. I'm using that reference, but I'm doing my painting. It's about the painting. And that painting has nothing to do with the photography. And, you can see it in someone who's trying to get better. But that's the other problem with being online is they show these things too soon. They share too much too soon. You're gonna wait a little bit.
Yeah, I think one thing that that helps with that is mostly I have to paint from photos when I'm doing like a deadline for somebody. Mm-hmm. But I think where painting from life comes in handy is for those situations, because I think I've heard you say before where you use a lot of black in your paintings, and you were told you shouldn't use black, and I've heard that many times before, and I use my main palette that I love to work with is basically like a Zorn palette, and of course black is basically your blue in the palette. But I'll use a little bit of French ultramarine in there and so on if I want to make a little bit more blue. But basically, it's a very limited palette, and there's black, but you don't feel like there's black because you don't necessarily just put down black. You're like someone's got their mouth open and yelling. You're not going to see. It's not going to be black in there. There's depth in that. Right. So I will use all color to soften it and give it some kind of depth. But when I'm doing like a portrait of somebody and I'm using reference, photos are a lot of times so terrible, So you have to know what to do differently you don't want it to look like a photo. But I've seen exactly what you're saying, where it's like, oh man, that's just like there's even like a weird glare in there that shouldn't be there because. Yeah,
exactly. Or there's they'll copy the white reflections on stuff exactly as white, which on the paper still has a little warmth if it's in a magazine or something, or if it's online, it still has a little light behind it. But they'll take the cold tube of white and just paint it exactly the same thing. And white is pretty cold in the tube, you know. Anyway, they'll paint all those anomalies.
Do you ever use one thing that I picked up from my dad? He's also a painter. Is I'll use like a yellow Naples light for a lot of the area. Instead of using white, use that. It kind of warms things up a little bit. It's, you know. Yeah.
Well, what I usually do is I'll take some of the Naples yellow and just touch it into the white that I'm using, and it mixes in there, and it gives that rich warmth that is especially important to know about. And for now, I just tell my students, just try this, and you'll understand what's going on later. You know, it's important to do it, and then they'll find their way through it. You
know. No, that's awesome. I have a couple questions for you, and of course, I want to show you some fan art. But I wanted to ask you real quick about you got to have your work in the Norman Rockwell Museum.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, that's amazing. I mean, first of all, the book was a huge accomplishment. Was 124 paintings?
Altogether, 124. 123 in the story, and the 124th one's on the inside of the cover.
That's awesome.
Hardback. To walk into this Norman Rockwell Museum and see your name with all the paintings in there is indescribable, really. When you've been thinking about the Norman Rockwell Museum all your career, and you've been thinking about Rockwell since you were a kid, and then the stuff is on the wall, and the first thought in my head was, that's a different guy. That can't be me, because I can't feel it. I'm like sort of reaching toward the wall, trying to grasp this. So a lot of time I've spent trying to realize that my work is on the wall at the Rockwell, and it's exciting that way. I have to say that the way that it got on the wall is by contacting the Rockwell and talking with Stephanie Plunkett and saying, I got this book coming out, and it's all about adventure. And I know, Norman did adventure stuff, and all those guys back then did adventure stuff. And what about an adventure show? And she wrote back and said, we're doing Frank Schoonover this coming whenever it was, and it's all about adventure. And she said, this is perfect. Let's talk. So I drove up there and spoke to them, and we combined the two shows from one gallery to the next. It was like past adventure and contemporary future adventure, and
it's amazing.
It was thrilling.
That's awesome.
And again, I did that thing where I asked for more work. So I said I can do a demo, I could do a lecture, or I could do a workshop, and we actually did all of those. And then I don't know if you know, but we did a radio play of the book.
Oh, wow. That's
awesome. They said, what else do you want to do? And I was sitting in the room with Mary, who was their education person there. And I said, well, I've always kind of wanted to do a reading, but with sound effects. And she said, oh, we can do that. And I said, really? And the next thing I know, we're in rehearsals with teenagers reading all the parts from the high school. I collected all the sound effects. We had a sound kid, and we had a director kid. They were all in high school, and a resident art director, Pat O'Donnell, was there, digitally cutting my paintings apart so they would move. And then Rich was the video guy there that was putting all that movement together. And it all came down to one night on February 1st in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. We had this old 1903 theater. And the students were on stage. They projected all the paintings behind them, a huge movie screen with movement and the sound effects going, and they read into microphones. And we had 300 people. We packed the house. It was only one night only. We rehearsed it, and we screwed it up every single time until we got it right one time before the doors open, 15 minutes before. And then we all did that over again, and it was done.
And was it recorded? Like, do you guys have, like, is there?
Yeah. I think there's a link. If you go to Muddy Colors on there, there should be a link there. I think you can find the link at the Norman Rockwell site as well. Just put it above the Timberline radio play, and you'll find that. And it was a lot of fun. Now my high school wants to do a radio play, and I'm hoping that if the show travels to other museums, hopefully when things open up, that they'll want to do radio plays with their local people there. With the
that's so awesome.
I would love that.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. That reminds me of when I was in high school. I was in a play called 1940s Radio Hour, and it was basically that kind of thing where we were pretending the whole play was being a radio station in the 40s, and they had the sound effects and the all these different things, and we had like shoes like walking on a wood plank to sound like someone's walking in a room, and it was really fun. Yeah.
I wish we could have done it live like that, but it's kind of tough to do explosions and stuff.
I had another question that popped in my head about your paintings, because I saw some pictures from the show, and so when you're doing your paintings, I've seen you like have like canvas tacked to the wall, and it looks like you're drawing and painting that way, or you have it flat on a desk. Yeah. But then when it's done, you stretch it onto like a canvas. After it's done,
stretcher bars.
Does it do that? I've always wondered about that. I've never worked that way before. Yeah. I don't like working on a stretched canvas personally. I don't like that feeling.
I don't either. Yeah.
So like most of my stuff I paint is like on like a board. Like this is like a linen board. It's like wood with linen on it.
Nice.
And I prefer that it's more stable to paint on.
Yeah, the brush responds better instead of trying to catch up with your stroke.
Yeah, I've never liked that.
I've never liked that either.
But when you stretch it, it doesn't do anything to the painting at all.
No, the reason I fell upon this idea was I got contacted by a client. They had to have this thing so fast. I used to prepare my boards of gesso on illustration board. Yeah, and it would take overnight to dry and all that stuff. Well, I didn't have the time to do that for this project, so I went to the art store and I found some pre-primed canvas. Someone had, a company stretches this huge piece of canvas on these bars, and they gesso it, and then when it dries, they cut it off the bars and they roll it into a tube, and they sell that. So you just pull it out, cut what you need, put it down on the desk. So the only reason we're working on stretched canvas is because a long time ago, they couldn't get wood that wide if you're doing those gigantic paintings. So they figured out to prime a piece of material. Yeah. But they left it on the frame. But you don't have to leave it on the frame. The frame is only there to make sure that it stays taut while the sizing or the gesso dries, and then it's rigid in a sense. So museums even today are still rolling paintings. Yeah. Old paintings are rolling and storing in tubes. People don't know that a lot. But so I get acrylic prime canvas because the acrylic stays flexible a long time. If it's oil primed, it gets a little rigid. So what I was able to do, paint on that acrylic prime canvas, roll it into a tube you could drive a tank over, and I shipped that to the client or the photographer, and that protected the painting like you believe. So and then awesome. I realized this is the way to work. This is what I wanted.
Yeah. I know I talked. Do you know who Cesar Santos is? He's pretty awesome oil painter. Does a lot of amazing oil portrait work.
I probably do. I'm not recognizing the name right.
I did a podcast with him maybe a year ago, but that was a very similar thing. He works on just like linen, we'll put it up on his wall, and I think he's got like a kind of a carpet behind it a little bit, not like a thick one, but something thin. So there's a little bit of softness.
Yeah.
And then he just rolls up his painting and ships it to wherever it needs to go, and then they frame it and whatever else. I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
once it's rolled up, and then you have to have a conscientious framer that understands that you don't pull it as tight as you would when you prime it. You just pull it enough to keep it taut and put it on the frame. That's important. Yeah, but
That's
it
awesome.
doesn't. It's not a problem.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's that time.
No,
Questions.
come on, man. We got more questions.
This is that time for questions from fans. I got a couple questions from fans I don't want to forget. So this is questions from fans.
Questions from fans.
Okay.
This first one is by Noah Reagan. And here we go. I'll put this up here so you can hear it.
Hello, Jason and Greg. My name is Noah. I'm a big fan of both of yours. Greg, I recall seeing one of your Muddy Color blogs and how you worked as an illustrator at an advertising agency. And I work as a freelance illustrator in the very same town of Waterloo. And one thing I found in these last 2 years of being a professional illustrator is that the profession itself is a very solitary one, which has its pros and cons. And my question is, having the experience of working as an illustrator in both your home studio as well as a traditional office environment, which do you prefer? All right. Thank you.
Wow. Totally. Okay. I have to answer this in two parts. I was going to say I totally prefer being by myself in my own studio, because I guess that was my vision years ago, that a successful illustrator was on their own, freelancing like Norman Rockwell and all those guys. And that was the job. And so I like long hours by myself. I don't have a problem with that. And I have lots of friends and family and stuff, so that's not a problem either. What I do miss a lot is the camaraderie and that closeness that you find in the studio environment with people around you, and trading ideas and talking about stuff and arguing and laughing and doing that whole thing. I miss that so much, and I only had 2 years of it, and I'm in touch with those guys, and we still talk about how great that time was, even today. And yet we know we couldn't go back to that.
Yeah.
But starting out again, I would really like to have that experience again. And I know that most of the illustrators now that can have a studio experience is probably going to be working at Disney or Hollywood or some animation studio or conceptual design, art for film and gaming and all that, and eat it up, because it doesn't happen like that at home. I love that camaraderie. Plus, you're trading ideas, you're cross-pollinating all those ideas, and stuff will come up you never thought of, and it's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So, but ultimately, I'm home doing that. Although now with COVID, we're all online together.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it is funny during this whole thing. I mean, this has been a very surreal experience in a lot of ways, but I mean, for me, I'm used to just being in my studio all the time anyway. So I'm in my house at all times for the most part. My wife is here all the time, so it's not like I've heard some. This has been terrible in a lot of people's marriages, and it's like, man, you know what? I thought that you were pretty cool until I had to spend 8 hours a day with you. And now I realize you're crazy. And like, I've heard there's been like a lot of, been some terrible things too, like, which surprised me. Like, like physical abuse has gone up and all kinds of terrible things like that, where people like, man, you're only good on small doses. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
But luckily for me and my family, like, we're always here because I work here and whatever. But But it's a weird time. Like it's very strange. You said you're in Kentucky?
I was born and raised in Kentucky. Right now I'm holed up on Long Island.
Long Island, okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I haven't been to Kentucky for a while.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I spent a lot of time in Oregon. Yeah.
How's it been there with all of this going on? I mean, is it still complete lockdown there?
Pretty much, yeah. Long Island is still zone. Long Island, New York area, and all that stuff. We're still locked down, and we're still, have cases going up, and we still. Irene Gallo and I go for walks and stuff it's a small town, a little hamlet. But even in this hamlet, halfway out on Long Island, there's 50 plus cases of coronavirus out here. And we're still struggling with people deciding whether to wear their mask or not, and I don't know what it's like back in Kentucky right now. Some of my friends are saying that it's opened up and stuff. But out here, we can't do that yet. The concentration of people is too great. And
that's the same in Chicago. It's they're starting to say that on the 29th here, there's certain things that are going to start opening up where like there's going to be outdoor restaurants, but everything's spaced and stuff like that. But I don't know. We'll see. But right now, everything's still pretty much locked down. Like everything, you got to wear a mask. Here, you can't go anywhere unless you're wearing a mask.
That's very cool. I got to
go
say,
in places. Yeah.
Yeah, I when we're outside walking, we carry masks with us. If we're in the woods or something, we only put them on when we can see people coming and stuff. But the whole thing with the mask. When I was in Japan ages ago, if someone had a cold, they wore a mask for you, not for them. They wore it to keep it from spreading to people on a subway or whatever. And I thought that was so great. I'm hoping now that we'll do the same, that we won't laugh at people for wearing a mask. We'll appreciate it,
Yeah. You would think, like, I think it's interesting how I'm not sure what it's like there, but here in Chicago, all of the grocery stores and everything all have plexiglass up between the customer and the register and everything. Yeah. And it's just funny. It's like it took this to do that. I mean, how many people go to a grocery store every day? At least 100 or more have some kind of a cold or something. You think that hopefully they keep the plexiglass. Like they should. They do it when you go to a Subway to order like Subway sandwiches. You can't they cover the food with the glass.
Yeah.
People are disgusting. Is what I'm trying to say. Or gross.
If you go to Chipotle or anything like that, they have a glass screen from people talking and spitting.
Yep.
Food. Speaking of spitting, they're talking about trying to keep the baseball players from spitting now, and I'm like, I love that. I never thought that was cool in the first place.
That's hilarious. I have a feeling you know who this person is, Tim Langendorfer.
Langendorfer. Tim Langendorfer.
Langendorfer. Oh, that's a weird name, dude. No, I never can say it right. Langendorfer. It sounds like a North Wisconsin hey, how's it going there? Langendorfer,
Yeah, send us a postcard.
Yeah. So here's a question from Tim. Here you go.
All right, Greg, you know the name of this podcast, so here goes. Stephen K. Hayes has a katana sword raised above your head and asks you one question for your life. What is better, the Hamilton King Award or a cup of joe from Central Perk on Far Hills?
Oh my God. Well, first off, let me clarify that for folks. A sword above my head from Stephen Hayes would be a sword test that you do when you're moving into 5th Dan ninjutsu work. as martial artists, and which is a pretty telling test of your awareness. And Central Perk is a coffee shop in Dayton, Ohio. That's was created years ago by some friends of ours from England, and it's a great little coffee shop. They do a high tea in the afternoon, British high tea, and all that.
Cool.
It's wonderful, yeah. So, yeah, is it Hamilton King or a cup of coffee from Central Perk? Whoa. The only trouble is that the coffee doesn't last as long as the Hamilton King. So I'm probably, forgive me, Mike and Rose, they own the shop, but probably gonna have to go with a Hamilton King on that one, because that lingers, that lasts quite a long time. But I can taste that coffee now that I talk about it. Thanks,
awesome.
Tim, for the on the spot there.
That's
I never
awesome.
did take the sword test, by the way, in my training. I made it to 2nd degree black belt, but no further.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I won't mess with you.
Well, you won't know it because I was a ninja. I was too sick.
So you're not gonna believe this. I know this sounds silly before I even say this, but I got some connections. I know some people. And I was able to get a question from this guy. You may have heard of him from the Tiger King show. Mr. Joe Exotic himself from prison has a question for you, and I think that you'll enjoy this.
Oh, yes. Hello there, Greg. Big time fan, long time listener of the show, first time caller. I was just wondering, do you think Carol Baskins is a murdering bitch? Or is she just a sweet old lady who just loves her kitty cats? Just wondering what you think there, buddy.
So there you go.
I think the Tiger Man is insane. Wait a minute. Which person was he talking about? I missed it.
He was asking if you think Carol Baskins is a murdering bitch.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, I'm not sure. I only got to about 3 episodes of that thing, and I had to go. My God.
Oh, man.
What a nut.
Oh, man. All right. So I've got
imitations now, Jason.
Huh? Oh, yeah.
You do imitations? Part of your
man, I do.
Oh my God.
I did. It's funny. I did a Trump one on my last podcast, just spontaneously because I was talking with an artist from Sweden and asking him about stuff, and he started talking shit about our president, and so I had to put him in his place, in his Swedish little place, you know. It's like, you don't know what you're talking about, Sweden. Okay.
That's perfect. That is perfect. Oh my God. Oh, well, you could use some of his reasoning, for illustration. So, like, if we do the testing, if we did far less testing, we would find there are far less cases in the world. So
exactly. There
you go.
That's so smart. It's so smart.
And it's deep. It's rich.
And if you hold a shoe to your ear and talk into it and pretend it's a phone, it might really be a phone. You have no idea.
Oh my God.
Jesus.
Oh my God.
So I've got some fan art to show you. So let me let me know if you see this.
Yes. Oh my God. Holy cow! Look at that. That is
this is cool.
Wow.
This first one is by Valentin Chibrit. He's from Romania.
Whoa. That is insanity. Apparently, I have big front teeth, maybe, whatever. Wow. That is, I'm loving it. Especially, not only the color, but just the lighting and the exhibit.
Yeah, I met him in Missouri, Memphis. at this ISCA caricature convention this last November, and he's really cool. He does these really fast on an iPad, and
Wow.
he just starts grabbing color and going crazy with it, and it's crazy how quickly he works. It's really nuts.
Oh man, that's digital. I mean, I
Yeah.
was entirely fooled. It's not very big on my screen, but still, it looks really good. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Really nice guy too. Really awesome.
Wow. How'd you get him to do that?
Hey, I just put it out there, and
Wow.
I have no idea who's going to submit every week. So
Wow, that's great.
it's just a fun. It's just something fun I do with every guest.
Yeah.
This one is by Farshid.
Nice. These are amazing, man. Look. Holy crap. Oh my God. I love that adjustment on the eyeball.
Yeah. It's interesting that I see some similarity with the eyes to Alfred E. Newman from Mad Magazine a little bit.
I do. Yeah, on this one. Oh, that's
Yeah.
scary. Wow.
Here's a fun one. This is by Waleed Shihab. And he actually did two, like he did another quick one, so I allowed for a second one. But I thought this was pretty funny.
Whoa. Yeah, that's
expression.
hysterical.
And here's the second one. So he did
Whoa.
another sketch.
Oh God, my eyebrows.
Yeah,
Fantastic. I'm feeling good about these, by the way. You know?
that's good.
Yeah.
This one, I love this one.
No. Oh, great. Oh, man.
This
I
is
didn't-
my French friend Jacques Remoni.
Yeah. Whoa. Oui. It is
Yeah, this
magnificent.
yeah, this is so funny because I didn't see when he first sent this to me. I read his explanation, and he was like, for some reason I wanted to draw him as the lion from Wizard of Oz, and I was like, what the heck is he thinking?
All right.
But then when I saw the image, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, that is hilarious. Holy cow. And it
So
looks
funny.
like me. That's the scary part. Yikes.
Afar, or the king of the forest, not prince. Sneaking up on me, eh? Pulling
Oh.
next on me, eh? Why, I oughta.
Trying to sneak up on me, eh?
Yeah. Here's
man.
this is by Jonathan Groot.
Wow.
This is cool.
Wow, that is great.
Kind of look like Robert Redford, sort of.
Oh, well, yeah, I have that. Yeah. Mhm.
Pretty awesome.
Oh, I love the lighting on that. The nose is great. That little bit of warm light coming through the nostril, fantastic,
Yeah, that's cool.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I'm feeling really good now. I mean, this is cool. You can-
Awesome. This is a cool one too.
Whoa.
This is by Jonathan Hunt.
Wow. That's pretty amazing based on the reference I sent. Holy cow. The tilt of the head and everything makes me feel like it's almost verging on Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Right? A little bit of a twist in the head. Something. Not that, okay.
This almost reminds me of like a image that you would see in a book of an author. Like
yeah.
this is the writer, Gregory Manchess.
Oh, yes. The thing is, before you click away, the more I look at that, there's some really nice quality in that nose shape and stuff. The thing about aging is bizarre. I've only done a few self-portraits in my life. Some people do them all the time, but I just didn't want to look that long at myself. But I did one when I was like 19 or 20. And I remember thinking at the time, what's going to change or whatever. And it's just bizarre to watch like those wrinkles on the side of the eyes over there. They're mostly
Yeah.
laugh lines, I think. But where'd they come from? I never used to have those things, and stuff just starts changing shape, and you're like, well, I guess this is what you're in for, you know? Wow.
I know. It's it's funny. Victor Huaz said this exact same thing. Like he when I was talking with him, he was saying how things just are just hanging there now. Like where did that come from?
Yeah, it is bizarre.
Yeah, it is strange.
Wow.
This is an interesting one. This is by Julio Cesar Warrens.
Oh, that is a sweet one as well. Look at this, man. This is an amazing collection. Look at the light and the shapes on those things.
Yeah.
And see, I love when I oil paint, I love to work on the shapes and define the shapes and block in areas of planes and stuff. And I used to love to draw like similar to this, where you render things out into just shape for a while. Those great guys that did that, like Stavrinos. I'm sure you know his work and stuff.
Yeah.
But this is a wonderful drawing as well. Incredible.
Yeah,
Nice polar bear.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Wow.
And this one is by Dominic Zeilinger.
Whoa. See, this he's even got the glasses in there. That's amazing. I never thought I'd get a nose like that, but I guess I have it. And this makes me look like a cross between Albert Einstein and myself. I'm being aged even as I study it, Wow.
That's funny.
Oh, man.
Let's see. This next one is by Blake Loosely.
Whoa. Are these from around the world or around this, I guess?
Yeah, from all over the place. I'm not sure where everybody's from. A few of these artists have submitted before, and so I've started to get to know some of them.
Oh, okay.
Like the last one is from I think Austria. I'm not sure where this one's from.
Wow. Well, that's the thing is, in all these, everybody seems to keep nailing the likeness. I tend not to think I have a 4-foot forehead, but now I'll think about it. Look at that. I'm even wearing that shirt today.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Unbelievable. That's a nice one.
Yeah. No, there's a good batch. I love this one. This one cracked me up.
Oh.
That's pretty funny, man.
Oh my God. Above the Timberline. Okay. Yeah. That's a little scary.
Yeah. This is by Laurent Grissat.
Wow.
Yeah, this is funny.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
Oh, there's another bear in the background I just noticed as well.
Oh, yeah, just above his head?
Yeah.
Right. Unbelievable. Nice work. Wow. And I look at that and think, oh, no, that's not some other guy. That's supposed to be me.
Like, this is not my day.
Whoa. Incredible.
And this one is by Daniel Duford.
Wow.
You pick.
Yeah.
Dufford, maybe.
Dufford, probably, I suppose.
Yeah. This has really
Nice.
cool color work. I really like it. Nice brush work, too.
Yeah, I like that. And I also like the slight, the sharp and soft combined together is really nice. That stroke just on the bridge of the nose going up toward the left there is just brilliant. Really.
Yeah.
I love
awesome.
that. That's great. Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll send you these, by the way.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love it. Wow. Those glasses, by the way, I had heard that they had glasses you could fit in a cigar tube, and I thought, wow. So I started looking through the internet, found these things, and unfortunately, it make a person look a little older than it's time. But the great thing about them is that my far vision is doing well and my close vision is not, so I can't really do bifocals. So This I can look and sketch like if I'm at the society doing sketches. I can see my sketch paper, and I don't have to tilt my head down to look over the glasses and see the model who's also in sharp focus. So
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
it's really great. So I say that to anybody out there that with vision stuff, they're great for drawing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Whoa, man! They even had to go get the goggles and everything.
This is by Darko Stojanovic.
Oh yeah. I met Darko over in actually in Malta. We were at the Trojan Horse was a unicorn event last September, and got to know him. He's a really solid painter, digital stuff, and a great guy, and hung out over there. Hey, that's a nice one. If you're watching, Darko, good job, man.
Yeah, it's cool.
Wow.
This is a watercolor by David Watson.
Okay. Very cool. I probably would say, gee, my mustache isn't quite that white yet, but everybody's making it that way, so maybe I have to just face up to facts.
I'm starting to get white mustache hairs, and it's
man.
what's weird is they're like I'll have like this every once in a while I grow my mustache out, and it'll be like all like soft, and then all of a sudden I have like this wire, like this white hair that's just like where did you come from?
Yeah.
And it's just like it's just weird. It's like completely different kind of hair. I don't know.
Yeah. It'll do that for a while, and then it'll just go white and say, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. Oh my God. This looks a little bit like Stephen King.
I can see that.
God.
It's funny.
If I just had a big buck tooth. That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really nice brushwork as well, and the color is really cool. This is by Ewan McTavish.
Oh man, wow!
But I love the brushwork, and I think it's really cool. That the way the color, I love the warm side, just kind of nice soft values, and it's really cool.
Yeah, me too. And I love the way it visually just sort of slides over into the shadow side, and there's a little look like pinkish purple cools in there, and I love that highlights. I'm a fan of those nice highlights on the edges of the planes and stuff. But yeah, the color's really great on that. It looks really easy too. Like it just knocked it out.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. God, the digital guys these days are amazing. Oh, yeah. There we go. Somebody used their own reference.
Yeah, this is cool. This is by Melissa Sue Stanley.
Wow.
Yeah, this is nice. It's a nice little drawing.
It's great. Yeah. Loving that. Wow. She's got that's what I do. That little finger comes out to steady the brush when I put it on there.
Yeah. That's funny.
Wow. This is going back a little bit because sometimes I used to wear a painting smock, and just wipe my hands on it till I killed it.
That's funny.
But yeah, that's a nice piece.
Yeah, I like the design in this one. The overall use of almost like the white of the smock going down into the paper, and just the overall silhouette of the whole piece is really cool.
Yeah, the composition and design of it is really, it's important, and I love those things like that. When people pay attention to the graphic design of a piece, I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I think this might have been at the Society, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not sure. Because of that background, it might be portraying the entry to the gallery downstairs.
Oh, yeah.
We were doing an Art Out Loud down there one time, but I'm not sure if that's the one. Cool. Wow, I could look at these all day. Whoa, look at that. Okay.
This is by Juan Gastelum.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
God, Turn. Look at that hair, man. What the heck? Yeah, that's he still captured me. There's a UFO in there, and of course, it's probably a polar bear cub up top.
Yeah, like hiding in the bush of your hair. That's pretty funny.
Wow, that's amazing. He's got the hand on the chest while I make a statement.
It says nature. And then this is the last one. This is by Tim Langendorfer for her.
Oh, Langendorfer.
Yep. Now this is awesome. I love his work. His work is so cool.
Yeah. Oh, Tim's great. Just a number 8 hog bristle. That is sweet, Tim. Look at that, man. He's even copied the signature, and Tim's a great drawer. Has been his whole time. I think he just came out of the box prepared to draw like crazy, and he's one of those guys that can do all kinds of different styles and directions, and just wow, that's really nice in there. The more I study that, thanks, Tim, too. Man, just circa 93. See, look at the dark hair. I did have dark hair at one point, and the mustache and beard were darker.
Yeah, it's cool. I love. He's it's really cool. He if you look on his Instagram, you can see he did one for Steven Silver. I had him on, and then he did one of gosh, what was the other one? Maybe it was Tom Richmond, I think. And it's really cool because he like it almost looks cool just like this, but then he'll like the ones he had on the other ones, they were like partially done, but there's like a bunch of sketches and studies, and then later he like kind of finished it more, and it looks really cool like that too. But there's something cool about seeing like the half like sketched with some oil paint put in there, and it's pretty cool.
I've always loved that approach. For the longest time, when I started out, I was trying to leave a lot of drawing in, and then some folks told me just paint it all the way out. Just do an oil paint it from edge to edge. Okay, so I thought that was a better way. So I painted from edge to edge. Now, at this stage, I'm like, no. I want some of that stuff left out. So the great thing that I had such a good time with on the book, the Above the Timberline book, was leaving half the painting undone in places, or just indication, or you can see some of the pencil, or you can see the washes underneath.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
I think it speaks to other painters, you know. If you're a painter, you get that, you know, but I love it. Yeah. Wow.
Let's see here. Am I back?
Yes, you are back.
Okay, cool.
I wasn't sure who that other guy was for a second there.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for submitting. That was awesome.
Oh, yeah. Thanks from me as well. Many, many thanks. That's incredible. What a great idea.
So, yeah, we have been going for a little bit, but I do want to I had a question I wanted to ask you, too, that I wanted to ask earlier, and I just remembered, having to do with the polar bears. Is, I mean, obviously, you know, you got to do a lot of research and gather as much reference as possible. But when you're doing, like, I'm thinking about it from an illustrator's point of view, like, okay, I got to do this thing, and I've got to tell this story, and there's gonna be all these polar bears doing all these different things. You got to be able to draw these polar bears from all these different angles and perspectives, and it's not like you can pose a polar bear. So I was just confused, like, about your approach to that, and curious about how you went about doing that, because it's amazing.
Well, thanks. I visited a lot of zoos while doing that. Was constantly gathering polar bear reference. I also, like, just before I started, I found this really nice polar bear plastic model at the American Museum of Natural History. bought that and was able to turn it and move it around so I could get a foreshortening along the neck or the ears or whatever it took. And then after that, it was mostly just freehand drawing it in. After a while, you know, you do about 123 polar bear paintings, and they're not all polar bears in the book, but after a while, you just get those shapes down, you know where you're going. So I could get it down generally, and after a while, because you've studied so much, the gesture alone will give you these shapes that you can read into. And then I would use the model and I would look at the reference and just pattern back and forth, looking for light from reference from a stock photo site, because I didn't get to go to, you know, the Arctic to check out the polar bears or anything. And they really don't take direction well anyway, so because they want to eat you all the time. But
too busy drinking Coca-Cola.
Yeah, I know those guys. Yeah, they're always carrying a case with them, you know.
Yeah. I love that. There's I think it's from this. I'm assuming it's from the same book. I think I was looking at a bunch of the images that you have on your website, but the rhinos with like these like snow rhinos.
Yeah. That woolly rhino.
Just so cool too. Like I love like one of the images where there's running, and it's just it's so cool to like I'm looking at it and being like, oh, that's cool. Should keep that in my library of I love how the movement, you're able to capture the movement of like just the fur with, I mean, you can count the brushstrokes almost on that. Like just just like there's the way that you lay the brushstrokes in there was so cool. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Thanks.
Do you ever do like little studies first before you go into these pieces?
Little studies. I did do one actual color study on a rhino, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted, so I gave up doing the color studies for the book. I also figured if I did color studies for the book, I'd be a little old man by the time that book got done. But what I did was those thumbnails. I would sit at Starbucks and do these little tiny thumbnails, doing the flow of the book, you know, and drawing, along with 40 other guys doing their own books, you know, writing away, and I was writing. But then I would take that and look at it and redo it onto about 2 inches by about 5 inches. So that was the 2-page, the double-page spread, and do it up about that big, and just do it loosely in there. And then I would slide a sheet of paper over the top of that and put it on the window, and then do another study on the top of that. So I have my guidelines and stuff. Oh, so I can change and still have the guide that I spent time getting stuff in there, proportions and things, and then correct it as I went. And I usually do a rubbery sponge-like thing. I use a black wing pencil, and then I wipe this over it. And it gives me that middle tone you were talking about. I go in with a kneaded eraser. I lift out highlights and take the black wing and deepen the shadows. And then that was all the farther I went. I took that, shot it, projected it on the canvas, lightly traced it off, and then would do a drawing direct to the canvas on those polar bears. I just drew them freehand. And then when it was my figure and stuff, then I projected the reference. And then I'd have to redraw the weaponry, and mountains were all free-handed by looking at reference and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was fun from the first day I started writing to the day it came out. I never experienced a time when I didn't want to work on it. I never experienced a time when it was too much. It was just fun. I'm a little worried about the second book because not in the series. I'm doing one on griffins versus biplanes called Knights of the Air. I'm a little worried that what if I bog down on this one? You know, I don't think I will. So far, it's been a lot of fun. It's my world, and I make stuff up, and that's great. You know,
that's so cool, man. That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for joining me for this, man. This is it's been so much fun talking with you. I feel like I could talk to you all day long.
I could, Jason, man. It's been wonderful, and it sounds like you we've had similar experiences, even being, you know, decades apart in age or whatever. It's true that I think we all come from a certain central evolutionary point as artists and drawers and painters and illustrators. And a lot of people refuse to believe that, but I tend to think that we evolve from similar spaces, as you may have heard me talking about talent all the time. I hate that stuff. I just don't think there are gifts like that. And I think artists are built and not born. And when I talk to you, I hear a fellow painter. And that's really important.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm like. When I see your paintings, it's like a language I understand. Like I'm like, okay, I'm like, I get that. Yeah. And it's interesting that you say it too, because that drives me crazy when people are, you know, they'll say, man, it must be so great just to be born so talented. And man, I wish I was that talented. And it's like, you know, the truth is that it's always been a struggle. It's been really hard work, and it's been something that I've wanted, and I can't even tell you how many times I probably should have like tried to figure something out when I was younger. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I just keep coming back to this drawing. I just want to draw and draw. And then when I started painting, I just want to paint. I just want to learn more and push myself. Right. But like, you can't do what I do or what you do unless you put everything into it. Like, you just can't.
Absolutely. Like, and sometimes maybe this happens to you, but you wonder why do I need to do this? Where is that desire coming from? And then I hear other people say, see right there, it's this thing you're born with. You can't help it. You have to do it. No, I remember walking away from it. I walk away from stuff now too. And it takes that hard work to drag yourself back to a problem that you have to solve. But as soon as you solve it, you get that dopamine hit, and you're like, I got to do this again. This is incredible. And it takes a lot of work. But
there is a like I believe there may be, like, in our DNA, you know, aspects of being an artist, like, I think can go through your DNA and through family members in a certain way, whereas like, but it's not like you're born able to just, you know, do whatever. But like in my family, for example, like my dad is an amazing painter, and he's a good musician. He's a writer, and it's for me. Like, you know, I've been into acting, and now I'm doing stand-up comedy. I used to be in bands, and I used to used to tour the country in bands. I've put out tons of records. I can sing, I can draw, I can paint, all this kind of stuff. My grandmother from England, she's a musician, singer, songwriter. She paints. And then her grandfather in London used to be what do you call it? Blanking. The calligraphy writing for the newspapers in London. He used to be the guy back in the day, would actually do the writing for the newspapers, for the headlines, and it just goes back with my Welsh family. Mostly just like so many of my family have been like musicians and painters, and so for me, I was born with an artist as a father, and I just was around art and music, and it just was normal. But he never pushed it on me. I just started drawing, and by the time I was 10, I just sketchbooks just full. Wow. And then when I bought a guitar, saved up for a guitar, a week after I had it, I had my first show. Like it was just, that's how it was. I just jump into it.
Wow. This is a pretty amazing and similar too, because I was in music. I like to do acting, or did, you know, a long time ago. I was doing singing and dancing on stage and stuff like that. I was a drummer. Cool. So I love music as well. So there is that creative energy coming out. I think a lot of that comes from our close in surroundings. The trick with the DNA thing, if we go by what DNA used to be thought of, is that it was rigid, unchanging. That was it. What you're born with, that's all you get. So if that's true, it does mean that those genes go all the way back into ancient history, which means if you're a ping pong star, those genes are back in the past DNA history. And if you're an artist, it means that went all the way back before the cave painters. So wait, that's not working. And the science now is that the DNA is extremely flexible and changes on the fly sometimes.
Yeah, and, that's more of like what I've heard about it. But I think like for example, I've got 3 daughters and I have the 4th one coming in a few weeks. And all of my daughters are very creative. But even my 2-year-old, she's like always talking about painting. She loves to paint. We have a little easel for her, and my wife's a painter as well. She does oil paintings. And so, but the thing is they're around the art because that's what we do. We're always doing art, Right. Even when it comes to drinking wine, I'm telling the girls, it's not just daddy's treat. Okay. Wine is life. It's a living thing. You can buy 3 bottles of the same thing, and they can all taste different. There's art to wine. There's art. So I feel it's very important. Plus, the kind of kids that I want to raise, I want them to be open-minded, and I want them to be free-thinking humans, and to soak up as much of everything they can. And I think us as artists do that naturally in a way where we just appreciate things in a different way. I think. I mean, that's just might be my own selfish perspective, but I feel like the more plays you can go to, the more music you can experience and cultures and all that stuff, it's going to make you a better artist, but also I think a better person.
I grew up in a household with a lot of music, a lot of books, a lot of movies, TV, and we went to movies as a family in the theaters and all that sort of thing. I was exposed to so much. It was incredible. I had an idea and it just went out of my head there, but which happens when there's so much rushing forward to talk about. So it is important for your kids to be in an environment like that. And I know what it was. It's about the growth mindset. Carol Dweck has a book called Mindset. And there's the growth mindset and then the other rigid mindset. There's a different term for it, which is escaping me, but a fixed mindset is what you called it. And you want the growth mindset. You want to be open to ideas and moving forward. And that's why I'm encouraging my students all the time to get your voice and then innovate and constantly keep moving and changing through it. You want to have a growth mindset through your career and that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And probably should slide in here that I'm a big fan of your work as well, my friend.
Oh, well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
No, I'm not just saying that. It's great stuff. So
cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Irritatingly good is what I'm talking about. It pisses me off good is what I'm talking about.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And people going just jumping back to, people would say, well, I don't care what you say, Manchess. I could never paint like you. And I'm like, I know. You don't want to paint like me. You want to paint like you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the point.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I get asked, like I've done a lot of interviews and people always ask me about artists that influence me. Of course I'll like list artists that influence me, but then also who you worried about? Who's your competition? And it's like, just me, man. That's it. Like, I've done some crappy work in the past. I don't ever want to do that again. I want the next piece I do to be better than the last piece I did and just continue.
Exactly.
I can't worry about what, Greg Manchess is doing or Tim O'Brien or these other guys that I'm doing competing covers for and stuff. I can look at their work and say, okay, all right, that was awesome. I see you there. All right.
Yeah, I see you.
Now,
I raise you.
What can I do to to push myself to, instead of like feeling like it's competitions, more like, all right, like what can I do to bring myself up and to push myself, that's the way that I try to think about it. And mostly, again, like it's about, in one aspect, it is about, trying to, make it so that the doors continue to open and you get more work, obviously.
Yeah.
But also on a more personal, it's your personal growth as an artist. Like I wouldn't be happy with just staying way over here, back here, when I could be way over there, and keep going and keep going. And I just think it's important, like, it's to try different things and push yourself.
Because when did you say at the beginning of this you feel like you could eat the painting or something like that about my work?
I said the brushwork is just delicious. Like I love.
There you go. Because when I look at your work and other people, see if this fits for you. When I look at other people's work that I admire and I study it, or I can feel it. I can feel the work going down. I can track how it was created almost, and you get a sensation in your mouth and your fingers where you want to go reproduce that, have the same feeling, maybe even copy it just to get it down, And the folks that I admire, I have that visceral reaction to it that my hand starts to itch or my mind starts to go, I love that. So I assume you're feeling the same stuff.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, like I did a few oil portraits about a year or so ago that I had to do for this university, and right when I was working on, I think the third one, there was a sergeant show here in Chicago, and I went to the show, and I was just like, it blew me away. Just, I mean, I've seen his work many times, but this was like a huge collection of work.
Yeah,
and just,
I think I remember the show.
Oh, it was just like amazing just to see, because I hold him at such a high place. So when I see the work, I'm like, look how simple he makes it look. Yeah. But then it's not simple.
No.
But like it looks like all I know is this is when I came back from the show and worked on my painting, I felt like a little bit of Sargent was coming out of me. Like I just felt so excited, and I was like doing things on the sleeve with my brushwork that I just saw him like, and trying to like get that feeling. I'm like, oh, I feel like so much energy right now, and like
and that is how we learn. That is the essence of it. There was a series of videotape back in the 80s where if you wanted to learn how to play guitar or bowl or golf or whatever, you would study these videos of perfect golfers, guys with brilliant golf swings and all that kind of stuff. And you'd study it over and over visually. Then the idea was to get your butt on the golf course right away and try it out. And you can feel it very quickly. So that is what, there's so much study going on now about by different guys, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, I can't even pronounce his name, and there was another guy that did a book called Peak. It's all about peak performance, and you try to emulate, you study and watch and try to duplicate that performance. When we do it in art, everybody looks at you like you're a copier and a cheater. No, you want to feel it. I tell my students, you want to draw on paper, not only just to be good at drawing on paper, but to feel that vibration going through the pencil up your arm and into your head. It's a physical, visceral thing. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of stuff I think is magical. That's the kind of stuff that later on somebody points to and says, look at the talent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, man, again, thanks so much. This has been awesome. This is really cool. And it's so cool, to be able to talk with another artist, or I feel like I completely understand like your language, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just like, it's cool to hear your stories and your process. And man, also congrats again on the awesome success that you've been having for like how many years now. It's old news. It's old news to you, but man, like so cool to be able to like you. I've gotten some cool things I've gotten to do with my art, and it's one of those things that you just, for me anyways, like it's always a cool thing. Like it always feels good to kind of accomplish those things. But I also appreciate that you're an awesome guy and cool to talk to, and it's been a pleasure to hang out with you, man.
You too, Jason. This has been great, and I'm blown away by everybody's portraits of me. That's pretty astonishing. That's such a cool angle you got going. And listen, if you want to get even deeper into stuff, let's do it again.
Yeah, I would love to, man. We'll definitely have to do it again, man. So thanks again, and to everyone watching and supporting, thank you so much. Remember to be safe, and let's see what else. Take your vitamin C. Try not to watch too much news. Wash your hands. Watch your filthy bodies. You're disgusting. And I love you all, and I'll catch you on the flippity flop side. See you guys.
See ya.
You want answers?